The HOA didn't like my gnomes, so I built them a castle. I'll never forget the day Karen stormed into my yard like a hurricane in a blazer, her clipboard swinging like a guillotine. "These gnomes are a disgrace," she shrieked, her voice piercing the quiet of my suburban street. My heart sank as I stood there, dirt on my hands tending to the petunias my grandma taught me to grow. Those gnomes weren't just lawn ornaments. They were my joy, my rebellion, my little army of whimsy. And Karen, the HOA's self-appointed dictator, wanted them gone. What she didn't know was that her war on my gnomes would end with me building them a freaking castle. My name's Ellie, and I've lived in Meadowbrook Estates for 3 years. It's a cookie-cutter neighborhood in Ohio, all manicured lawns and beige siding, but I made my corner special. My front yard was a riot of color, marigolds, zinnias, and daisies, all surrounding a dozen quirky garden gnomes. There was Grumpy Gus with his tiny pickaxe, Sassy Sally in her polka dot hat, and Sir Chuckles, who I swore smirked at passers-by. They were gifts from my late grandma, who'd giggle like a kid every time she added one to her own garden. "Keep life silly, Ellie," she'd say. So I did. The neighbors loved it. Kids would point and laugh, and even grumpy old Mr. Jenkins next door gave me a nod once. But Karen? Oh, Karen hated it. Karen was the HOA president, a title she wore like a crown. Mid-40s, blonde bob, always in a blazer like she was auditioning for a real estate reality show. She'd patrol the neighborhood with her clipboard, sniffing out violations like a bloodhound. "Forgot to roll your trash can in by 6 p.m.? Karen's at your door. Grass half an inch too long? Expect a fine." She once told Mrs. Rodriguez her mailbox was too festive because it had a sunflower sticker. Karen didn't just enforce rules, she relished it. And when she set her sights on my gnomes, I knew I was in for a fight. It started with a letter. "Dear Ms. Thompson," it read, "your lawn decorations violate HOA guidelines for aesthetic uniformity. Remove them within 48 hours or face fines." I was livid. Aesthetic uniformity? My gnomes were art. I marched to the HOA meeting, ready to plead my case. Karen sat at the head of the table, smirking like she'd already won. "Ellie, those gnomes are tacky," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "They lower property values. You're making us look like a circus." The other board members nodded like spineless puppets. I argued they were sentimental, harmless, beloved, but Karen cut me off. "Rules are rules. Get rid of them." I went home defeated, staring at Sir Chuckles under the moonlight. Then came the shock. The next morning I walked outside to find my gnomes, decapitated. Every single one, their little heads smashed, scattered across my lawn like a crime scene. My stomach churned. I knew it was Karen. No proof, but her smug grin at the meeting flashed in my mind. She hadn't just sent a letter, she'd declared war. I knelt in the dirt, picking up Sassy Sally's broken hat, tears stinging my eyes. Grandma's voice echoed, "Keep life silly, Ellie." I wasn't going to let Karen win, not like this. I spent that day stewing, anger simmering into resolve. If Karen wanted my gnomes gone, I'd make sure they stayed. In style. The HOA rules were clear. No excessive decorations, but structures under 5 feet were allowed if architecturally harmonious. Fine. I'd build something so harmonious it'd make Karen's head explode. A castle, a gnome castle, big enough to house every gnome, compliant with every rule, and so spectacular the whole neighborhood would talk about it. I'd turn her petty vendetta into my victory. First, I called my buddy Mike, a contractor with a knack for DIY. "Ellie, you're nuts," he laughed when I told him the plan. "But I'm in." We sketched it out. A 4-foot stone castle with turrets, a drawbridge, even a moat. Okay, a shallow water feature. It'd be a fortress for my gnomes, a middle finger to Karen, and a tribute to Grandma's spirit. I'd need materials, stone, wood, fairy lights for flair, and a loophole to keep it legal. The HOA couldn't touch me if I followed their precious rules to the letter. I wasn't just mad, I was furious. Karen's vandalism, because who else would smash my gnomes, wasn't just an attack on my yard, it was an attack on my memories, my grandma's legacy. The HOA rules she worshipped were a flimsy excuse for her power trip. I checked the handbook again. Decorations deemed excessive by the board may be removed. Excessive? My gnomes were charming. Meanwhile, Karen's own yard had a gaudy fountain that looked like it belonged in a Vegas casino. The hypocrisy burned. She didn't care about aesthetic uniformity. She just hated anything that didn't bow to her control. And the neighborhood? Most were too scared to cross her. Mr. Jenkins whispered he'd seen a shadowy figure near my yard that night, but he wouldn't testify. Karen's got ears everywhere, he muttered. Coward. The final straw came when Karen taped a new violation notice to my door. Failure to remove debris, gnome fragments, within 24 hours will result in a $500 fine. It read. Debris? She'd smashed my gnomes and was now fining me for the mess? I tore the notice down, my hands shaking. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. Karen thought she could bully me into submission, but she'd underestimated me. I wasn't just going to comply. I was going to fight back with the kind of petty, creative revenge that would make Grandma proud. The plan took shape over coffee with Mike and my neighbor Lila, a retired art teacher who'd once painted a mural Karen called an eyesore. Lila was all in. Let's make that castle a masterpiece, she said, her eyes gleaming. We pored over the HOA handbook, exploiting every loophole. Structures under 5 feet? Check. No excessive lights? We'd use subtle fairy lights. Water features allowed? Our moat would be a glorified bird bath. The castle would be a fortress of compliance. So airtight Karen couldn't touch it. But it'd also be a spectacle. Big, bold, and impossible to ignore. I wanted every neighbor to see it and laugh, to see Karen's rules for the joke they were. Mike sourced materials, reclaimed stone from a local quarry, cedar for the drawbridge, and waterproof sealant for the moat. Lila designed the aesthetics. Turrets shaped like gnome hats, windows carved with tiny pickaxes. I ordered new gnomes online, each one a doppelganger for the fallen. Grumpy Gus 2.0, Sassy Sally Reborn, and Sir Chuckles with an even smugger grin. The budget was tight, $800 total, but Lila chipped in paint and Mike bartered for discounted stone. We'd work at night to keep it secret, building in my garage until the grand reveal. Karen's gonna lose it, Mike chuckled. I hope so. Construction began under cover of darkness. Mike hauled stones while Lila and I assembled the frame. The castle took shape like a dream. 4 feet tall, 3 turrets, a working drawbridge powered by a hidden pulley. We carved a plaque, Gnome Haven Castle Est 2025. The moat shimmered with LED lights, just bright enough to dazzle without breaking rules. Every night I'd glance at Grandma's old gardening gloves on my workbench, feeling her spirit cheering me on. This wasn't just revenge, it was honor. I was defending joy, silliness, the things Karen couldn't stand because they reminded her she had no soul. We hit a snag when Mr. Jenkins caught us hauling stone at 2 a.m. What in tarnation? He hissed. But when I explained, his scowl softened. Karen's a tyrant. I'm keeping my mouth shut. His silence was gold. By day I played nice, clearing the debris to avoid Karen's fine while dodging her smug patrols. She'd drive by, eyes narrowed, sensing I was up to something but too arrogant to investigate. Her overconfidence was my weapon. The neighborhood buzzed with curiosity. Kids whispered about Ellie's secret project. But no one snitched. For once, Meadowbrook was on my side. The castle was nearly done, and the reveal was set for Saturday night. Lila painted the final turret while Mike wired the lights. I placed the new gnomes in their thrones, each one a tiny warrior ready to face Karen's wrath. But I added a twist, a donation box by the castle, with a sign, Support the Community Garden. If Karen wanted war, I'd fight with kindness too. Grandma always said gratitude turned enemies into fools. I was ready to prove it. Saturday night arrived like a storm of anticipation. Mike, Lila, and I hauled the gnome castle from my garage under a tarp, hearts pounding as we set it up in my front yard. At 8 p.m., I flipped the switch. Fairy lights blazed, the moat sparkled, and Gnome Haven Castle stood proud, a 4-foot fortress of defiance. Grumpy Gus sat on a turret, Sassy Sally guarded the drawbridge, and Sir Chuckles smirked from the throne. I posted a photo on the neighborhood Facebook group, Welcome to Gnome Haven. Donations for the community garden, welcome. Within minutes, neighbors poured out, kids squealing, adults snapping photos, even Mr. Jenkins clapping like a kid at a circus. Then came Karen. Her SUV screeched to a stop, and she stormed across my lawn, face redder than a tomato. "What is this monstrosity?" she shrieked, clutching a crumpled violation notice. Her blonde bob was a mess, her blazer askew. She looked unhinged. "You're in violation! This eyesore is coming down!" I stood calm, arms crossed. "Check the handbook, Karen. It's under 5 feet, architecturally harmonious, and the lights are within code." Her eyes bulged. The crowd murmured, phones out, recording her meltdown. "You think you're clever?" she spat. "I'll fine you for—" She faltered. She had nothing. Lila stepped forward, voice sweet as poison. "Karen, the neighborhood loves it. Maybe your fountain's the real eyesore." The crowd laughed and Karen's face twisted. She lunged for Sir Chuckles, but Mr. Jenkins, grumpy, silent Mr. Jenkins, blocked her. "Leave Ellie's gnomes alone," he growled. The crowd cheered. Karen, humiliated, stormed off, muttering about legal action. But the damage was done. Her power was crumbling, and Gnome Haven was the talk of Meadowbrook. By morning, the donation box overflowed, $300 for the community garden, with notes thanking me for standing up to Karen. Kids left drawings of gnomes. Mrs. Rodriguez dropped off cookies. The castle wasn't just revenge, it was a symbol. I'd honored Grandma's silliness, turned Karen's hate into joy, and reminded everyone kindness wins. At the next HOA meeting, Karen tried to rally the board against me, but the room was packed with neighbors demanding her resignation. She quit the next day, moving out a month later. Rumor has it her new neighborhood hates her fountain. I kept the castle up, adding new gnomes from neighbors' donations. Every night I'd sit by it, feeling Grandma's smile. Karen thought she could crush me, but I built a fortress from her hate. And the best part? Sir Chuckles now wears a tiny crown, ruling Gnome Haven like the king he was born to be. The end.